From the Advanced Learning Technologies Lab, this is the Culture Compute Podcast. In today's episode, recorded on Monday, September 16, we are diving into a topic of critical importance for educators worldwide, which is the integration of generative AI in educational settings. As we navigate the rapidly evolving landscape of artificial intelligence, this episode aims to provide valuable insights to teachers, researchers, and policymakers grappling with the challenges and opportunities presented by AI in the classroom. As schools, universities across the globe begin their fall semester, many instructors are grappling with how to integrate generative AI into their coursework. There is a growing awareness gap between the full potential of this technology and how students are actually using it. In this rapidly evolving landscape, educators must clear guidance on the ethical and responsible use of AI in learning environments. As we celebrate our 10th episode of the Culture Compute podcast, I'm maintaining our commitment to discussing cutting edge research while also addressing practical challenges faced by educators. Today, I'm focusing on a critical resource that is helping bridge the gap between theoretical possibilities and classroom realities in the age of generative AI. I recently had the privilege of speaking with Dr. Torrey Trust, who is a professor of learning technologies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Dr. Trust has developed an open access AI syllabus policy statement, which I will link in the show notes, where she states how this technology is rapidly becoming an invaluable tool for educators worldwide. Her comprehensive document offers clear, practical guidelines for ethically and responsibly integrating generative AI technologies such as ChatGPT into various educational settings. Her policy statement does not just outline the do's and the don'ts, but it also delves into the ethical considerations and responsible use of AI for learning purposes. This policy is not just a standalone document, but I believe it is a part of Dr. Trust's broader, widely cited research on professional learning communities and applications of AI in education. In my conversation, Dr. Trust shared her insights on AI in education and the thought process behind her policy statement. I wanted to ask you, how do you envision this balance between AI assisted learning and the preservation of our human creativity? How do you see that in the future, at least 5 years from now?
Think that is a challenging question to answer because it's such a complex idea, which is why I appreciate the question. AI assisted creativity seems so simple. You put in an idea and then AI comes up with 50 more ideas. Or maybe you start with a blank page and say, AI, come up with the ideas for me. Or you're working on a film and you say, AI, generate all the images first. Or you come up with an image and then AI revises it. And there is this potential, and there's a lot of scholars in the field who are saying AI is going to democratize creativity. And I hate that term because it makes it seem like we're not creative as humans. right? Like there's only a certain group of humans, artists, authors, for example, who are creative. And then everyone else needs some tool like AI to make them more creative. And that's not the case. And so there's scholars kind of arguing both sides. And I think this is why it's a complex topic to address. I definitely see the benefits. I use, generative AI tools for creative thinking pretty much every day, but in different ways. For example, I'm asked to write a workshop description. I give a lot of the same workshops to different universities and K-12 schools, and sometimes it takes up a half hour to write, workshop description. Whereas I could throw it into AI and say, give me 20 different workshop descriptions. And then I never take exactly what AI writes, but sometimes it'll come up with like specific terms or phrases or words or ways of organizing the words that I had not thought about. And it saves me a lot of time. And so then I just quickly mix and match. It still will take me maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe a little less time to help support my creative thinking. So when it comes to, AI assisted learning, I think it really depends on what the instructor or teacher thinks is most valuable to students and having a conversation with students about how to use these tools. Because, in my AI policy that I wrote, I said, you can use generative AI technologies to help with brainstorming. And then a lot of scholars commented and said, oh, but do you want students to write their first ideas down first? Because then AI might persuade them or add biases in that they haven't thought about. Or are you just going to allow them to let AI generate? And it depends on what I'm teaching. If I'm teaching the creative thinking aspect of my course, then no, I want my students to write down their creative ideas. So we'll come up with an invention to solve one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I tell my students come up with 20 ideas each. And they really struggle because creative thinking is not a big part of K-12 education or higher education. They're used to being talked at and then having to regurgitate that information on tests and papers. So when you ask them to think creatively, it can be hard. If they're now going to offload that to AI, it's not going to build their creative thinking muscles, so to speak. It's going to help them possibly be more creative, but won't help them develop those skills. Although, with the caveat of if they see what AI is doing and they're looking at it closely and they're critically thinking about it, potentially it could help their creative thinking skills. So I'll wrap up really briefly, trying to keep my responses short here. It really depends on how the student uses the tool, in the sense of not just asking generative AI to help with brainstorming, but critically evaluating the output and learning from the AI tool itself in what did the AI tool do to make this creative idea or creative list, not just, oh, here's a list of ideas, I'm going to go take one and run with it. So does that make sense? The difference between just taking the response to be more creative and critically analyzing, what is this tool doing to be creative and how can I take that and use it myself?
From like a cognitive development perspective, what impact do you believe that this AI-driven educational tools have on the students' deep learning processes?
Students in the past, the use of ChatGPT has increased over time. And not just ChatGPT, but generative AI technologies. And it's not because ChatGPT has become more familiar. It's because generative AI technologies are now being embedded into so many different tools and devices that students use. So for example, if they go to, Instagram or Facebook and Meta AI is responding to comments for them, or they can use Meta AI built into that. If they go to Google and do a search, now there's AI, summaries at the top. And so the numbers of people using AI is increasing only because it's kind of in our faces. It's there. Whereas before you had to go to ChatGPT, register, log in, and use it, there was less uses. So with that being said, we're at a point where it is there, it is obvious, it's being brought into so many different tools. Social media influencers are being paid to promote a lot of different AI tools, like here's AI that will go to your lecture class for you, record your lecture, take all your notes for you. Or here's AI that will read your 50-page PDF you have to read for homework and summarize for you. Or here's AI who will do your literature review for you. And these are getting, millions of hits, and students are thinking about, how do I get to my degree the fastest way possible? Whereas college, K-12 schools is really about learning, but that's not what the institutions make it out to be. It's about getting a grade to get the degree. The more I force my students to think about surface learning versus deep learning, you were talking about, higher order thinking and learning. I had my students, I put up a sign last semester, and there was like surface learning and superficial learning and deep learning. And, I asked them, which one are you doing in this class? And a lot of them in their reflections were like, wow, I never thought about in my other classes, I'm pretty much doing surface learning. Like, I'm not getting the material, like I'm doing what I need to do to pass the class. This class really forces me to actually learn deeply. So when it comes to AI, what role does AI play in deep learning is another, challenging question. I think there's some really incredible uses of AI, especially for neurodivergent students, disabled students who could benefit from using these tools to make learning more accessible. For students who are traditionally marginalized, could AI tools, make learning more inclusive? Of course, right now these tools are being doing opposite for traditionally marginalized students with all the biases and harmful information. But this is all to say, these tools have potential for aiding learning if used in thoughtful ways. What I mean by thoughtful is, say I have a 50-page article I have to read. If I were to go put that into ChatGPT and say, summarize this for me in a paragraph, it's not a thoughtful use. That's a quick, easy use. It's not going to help my learning in any way. Reading is about having a conversation with the author, really trying to understand, what is the author trying to say? Why are they using these words? How is this shaping my thinking and what I already know about the subject? You can't get that from an AI summary. But, say I struggle with going through 50 pages of technical and academic jargon and trying to understand what's going on, I could say, AI, generate like an outline or a series of essential questions that can get me thinking deeply about this text after I finished reading it. Even if it is a quick skim read and I go back and AI has generated some like deep thinking questions, that I might go try to dive into the different parts of the article to, I like that style of reading rather than just read straight through 50 pages and see what you remember. Could AI, help you more like a scavenger hunt or be a detective? What do you need to get out of this piece? So again, it comes back to this really thoughtful use of these tools. Could it, provide an outline? Could it, differentiate or personalize the materials in ways that makes it more relevant and meaningful to you? A lot of college classes are taught by instructors who don't put a lot of effort into making content relevant, and students keep asking, why do I have to learn this? Could AI help that issue so that their motivation changes and they're more intrinsically motivated to engage in deeper learning? That's one of the issues with deeper versus surface level learning. So again, I think there's a lot of beneficial uses. I also think there is problems with over-reliance and overconfidence. And there's a really great study by researchers who looked at, I think it was students in Turkey. It's from researchers from the University of Pennsylvania. There's a great report on it from Hetchinger reports, and basically looked at, I think, like thousands of students who were given access to generative AI to help with, I believe it was math learning, and in a couple different ways. One was like they just had access to generative AI tool. It was ChatGPT and could use it to learn. And what they found, not surprisingly, was students just went to ChatGPT and said, solve this for me. And so while they did get their practice questions correct because ChatGPT solved it for them, when it came to the test, they, of course, did not do well because they offloaded all their thinking and learning to ChatGPT. But interestingly, another group of students was given a different version of ChatGPT, which served as a tutor. And instead of just giving the answer, like tutored students through how to solve the problem. Now, you would think this is going to increase their test score. It did not. Because what I know, right? This is the part everyone thinks, okay, well, AI is now a tutor. It can just, take the place of the teacher. And what happened was students' perceptions, right? So they were tutored by ChatGPT. They felt stronger. They did significantly better on the practice problems. And then they came to the test. What was missing? Someone there prompting them to think differently, because they outsourced that to generative AI rather than how would they prompt themselves metacognitively of, thinking through, okay, here's the problem, here's how I break it down, here's what I need to think about. They offloaded all of that to AI. So they did great on the practice problems, and then the test came, they had no access to AI, and all of a sudden they're back to, well, I don't know how to do this on my own because generative AI was my tutor. That are looking at these different aspects of these tools, and the researchers ultimately were like, we have no idea why that happened, but that's my guess, is that overconfidence and over-reliance on these tools led students to not actually develop the strategies the tutor was helping them with.
That's a great insight that you brought in there. Thank you, Tori. Really. I know we are running late on time. Just last question I have is more like on a philosophical tone. I don't know why. After I started to enroll in other courses at UMass, my idea towards education has become more deeply associated with the society. I mean, I strongly believe that education, the purpose of education is to enable every individual to become successful citizens and have a happy life with whatever careers they are doing. And I think on a philosophical level, considering these ethical implications, what responsibilities do like us as educators or K-12 teachers or university professors have in shaping the students' understanding of AI? You know, do you see us as vehicles to help put the students' minds on the right track to use them AI ethically and not just copy paste?
I think every educator has a responsibility to bring the ethical issues surrounding AI into their classroom. I unfortunately have seen a lot of pushback, especially from higher education folks who say, I don't have time to cover this. K-12 teachers have a million things on their plates, and they keep getting asked to add more, and now they have to add AI literacy on top of everything else. The thing is, it's not that you need to find more time. You could literally go to ChatGPT and say, I'm teaching intro to nursing. How do I have a learning activity that covers AI hallucinations or the environmental impact of AI in how to give care to a patient? And it will come up with, talk about creative thinking, 10 different ways to bring in an ethical issue in whatever topic that you're covering. So I don't think time is an issue, but I do think there's a lot of pushback of, oh, well, this is important, but, every student should just take an AI literacy class, that's separate from a nursing program or whatever they're taking. And then we get into the issue of, well, if you're going to teach, future people who are going into the nursing profession, but they have a separate AI class, then they're not going to see the connections between what you're talking about and the ethical issues of AI. So I'm just picking on nursing here, but the medical field is adopting AI at a much faster pace than the education field, and in particular, I mean, for a lot of different reasons. They found that generative AI technologies like ChatGPT can write better, notes and reports than doctors can, because they don't have time. They're rushing from patient to patient. They can write reports that are more caring than doctors, more empathetic. Nurses too are going to be turning to these tools, whether it's to help with writing something up or quickly look up, a treatment plan or something along the lines. These tools will be embedded into nearly every career. Which means that every teacher has the responsibility to prepare their students for how to be informed citizens. And there isn't necessarily a right or wrong. These are some tough ethical issues. Every time you prompt ChatGPT, from what I read, it's like pouring out a bottle of water. Like, that's how much water that it wastes. So what does that mean? Does that mean you don't use these tools at all? Probably not, because you're going to keep using these tools, but maybe it means And you write out potential prompts in a document first, and you pick what you think is the most effective one and just try it out, rather than just continuing to revise a prompt and ask follow-up questions, because you're just then using more and more energy and electricity. But students then need opportunities to think about, you know, what are the implications, and how do I make decisions about these uses, whether it's environmental impact or human labor, data and privacy, digital divide, all of these things. So I've always thought that every teacher needs to have a way to bring this into their practice, and it doesn't have to be huge. It could be a single class activity, could be a homework or an enrichment assignment, um, because the more students have these opportunities to think critically about these tools and make informed decisions, the better off our future will be. Without those opportunities, then we have this kind of, letting AI make decisions for us, shape our future for us, without, understanding the impact of these tools and the decisions and how these tools were designed on us. And so that's why I kind of have to go, behind the scenes of these tools and really figure these things out, and their impact on society, as you mentioned.
I personally believe that Dr. Torrey Trust's insights are valuable as we navigate this new landscape of AI and generative AI in education. I am particularly struck by her emphasis on preserving human creativity alongside AI assisted learning. I think Tori also makes a point about the potential impact of these tools on deep learning processes, which is something even I have been grappling with in my own research. As a college instructor myself, I found her thoughts on our responsibilities in shaping students' understanding of AI to be both challenging and inspiring. It is clear that we need to be proactive in helping our students develop a critical and ethical approach to using these powerful new tools. Now, let's turn our attention to a recent research paper that complements our discussion with Dr. Trust. So, I recently came across a study published in the International Journal of Educational Technology in Higher Education earlier in September 2024, and it is titled Ethical Content in Artificial Intelligence Systems, a demand explained in three critical points. And it is authored by uh, Professor Bertoncini and Professor Serafim. As I was reading this paper, I could not help but think about how relevant it is to this ongoing conversation about AI in education. And it is fascinating to see how researchers are grappling with the ethical considerations that we need to keep in mind as AI becomes more aligned and more ingrained in our educational systems, right? But before we dive into the nitty gritty of the ethics, I should, I think I should totally take some time to think that it's worth talking about taking a moment to appreciate how transformative AI has been in education. From my own experience and research, I've seen some truly remarkable changes. For instance, I have witnessed firsthand how AI has been a game changer for students with writing disabilities, which is a class I teach. And it is not just about spell check anymore, because these tools can really help students organize their thoughts and express complex ideas more clearly. And so it is like giving them a new voice and that's an incredibly powerful tool if you think about it. And it is not just in the classroom where we are seeing this impact. AI has been reshaping the entire landscape in the academic landscape. A simple Google Scholar search for generative AI and education will show any of you how vastly interesting this area of research is, and that it is an ever growing area of research. But here is where it really gets interesting and really challenging, as we are reaping all these benefits that generative AI has given us, right? We are also having to wrestle along. We have to, we are having to wrestle with with some pretty profound ethical questions. The authors of this paper actually highlight three key areas that I think are really worth unpacking, especially after the discussion I just had with Dr. Trust. And the three items they provide are autonomy, the right to explanation, and value alignment. It is not enough for our AI systems to be efficient, but they argue that they need to be aligned with our educational values and goals. But that is where the kicker, these values can vary widely across different cultures and contexts. How do we ensure our AI systems are flexible enough to respect and incorporate this diversity? And it is important to be prepared that we have to agree here. But also, I see research in the field of chain of thought prompting, COT, is also rapidly helping us, I think, attain that goal really fast. I will keep track of that area of research. So, as I reflect on this, I am really struck by how these ethical considerations intersect with the broader themes we often discuss on this podcast: culture, education, and technology. It is clear to me that we need a multidisciplinary approach here. We need technologists talking to educators, ethicists collaborating with cultural scholars. It is only the I think it is the only way we are going to create systems, generative AI systems that your students interact with, that are not just smart but also wise. So, what do you think? How can we harness the power of AI to enhance learning while staying true to our educational values? I would like to hear your thoughts. You can leave a comment if you like to keep the conversation going on. And with that, we have come to an end of the episode 10 of the Culture Compute podcast. As always, the fantastic music you have heard throughout this podcast is composed by Liborio Conti. This podcast is a labor of love for me, drawing on my years of experience in educational technology. Until next time.